country music, I'd do it.
So
I'd be in.
we said earlier in the show we're going to talk about the athletic story by Katie Strang, Ian Mendez, and Dan Robson, talking about Eugene Melnick, particularly his 19 years, well documented, including incidences there that, quite frankly, are really ugly. Just in terms of now, after you guys read it, what was said. Just Justin, let's start with your thoughts overall on their article, what was written, and perhaps maybe even questioning certain things about it.
Sure. I certainly wouldn't question any of the reporting by any stretch. I think what I read a lot of was a profile of a man who, had some issues. I think the guy drank a lot. He was unhealthy. And I think it's at times you see people who make a lot of money young and then things start to go poorly, don't always handle it well. Sounds like the personal relationships were poor. Reading it, though, the thing that stood out to me most was the comments around the gay campaign, for Pride Night and the Love is Love and the way that was dealt with. That's the one thing that really stood out as egregious. The rest of it is just general tyrannical behavior, I feel like.
Yeah, bullying.
Bullying, yeah. So, if you're going through it and going, well, here's this felony he committed or something, like that's not in there, but it doesn't change the fact that it paints a picture of a man who wasn't good to people, by and large, and was difficult and abused his power and, made people feel uncomfortable and unwelcome and not good.
The question I have for you guys is about the timing of the piece.
Well, and that's what everybody's really talking about. And is it too early for that?
Yeah.
Are you?
What do you guys think?
I don't think it's too early.
When you start reading and we're thinking that most of it's been well documented and there's truth in it, then I'm sorry, but death doesn't
change the facts.
Change the facts.
And they had started reporting on this prior to Melnick's passing and had intended on writing this prior to the passing. It sounds like they were trying to get through. People were uncomfortable to talk about it before.
Yeah.
And they were more willing to share.
Well, and
after.
My understanding is that this piece has been worked on for a very long time.
Like more than a year.
More than a year.
Yeah.
Correct. So a lot of questions internally out of the Ottawa Senators is on a few things, but the one is, okay, like, what took you so long? Did you need him to die first before this was ever going to come out? Like, would this article have come out if he was still alive?
I think the answer is yes to that.
See, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that because I think on a dime, Eugene Melnick would have slapped lawsuits, and that would have been hanging over everyone's head. There's who's going to do that now? Is the estate going to do that?
Right.
Is his daughters going to now turn around and file those lawsuits that you knew were going to come if Eugene Melnick was still alive?
And that's a good point. That's a really good point. And also, everything in that article, if you read how they qualify a lot of the things that are said, is documented, particularly the most, I would say, damaging stuff about, the homophobic comments that he made. They said it's corroborated by several people. We saw the notes that followed up the phone calls. Like, everything to me was reported in a way that said, if someone were to sue us, we can back this up. But that wouldn't have stopped Melnick necessarily, to your point.
Yes.
He still would have sued, and they would have had to go through the whole. So maybe it's easier now to come out with it. I did see some people say, where was the local reporters on a lot of this? Because I think it's fair to say that when you hear things behind the scenes about certain people in sports and in life, whatever your job is, you heard some of this without it being reported. Well, why wasn't it reported before? I think, to use the example of the homophobic comments, how do you report that, you know, it just, you burn your bridge with the team, the ability to cover them, they cut you out. You know, it's hard. It's hard to talk about this stuff when someone's still alive and in bite size. They're in a tough spot, I think. We did.
Yeah, but they kicked out an NBA owner, you know,
Right.
for stuff like that.
Yeah. And,
And
you know, there's
like,
a varying degrees of severity, maybe.
if you're Gary Bettman's office, if you're on one of the board of governors and you're reading what you read today, what do you do now if you're in the head office of the National Hockey League? Is this something that you need to explore?
Why? Why? Melnick's not.
Well,
Everything's about Melnick. It's not the organization.
I don't know. Do you have to at least investigate it yourself to say, okay, how did this get to where it's gotten? Is it just Eugene alone? Are there other people that feel the same way or who supported Eugene throughout this? Like,
Yeah.
is there not responsibilities for people under that roof to say these conditions go against everything that we are about in the National Hockey League? How long did this go on? Who was not?
Yeah.
Who had a responsibility to stop it?
This is the whole thing with people who have absolute authority, and it sounds like he got rid of basically everyone who had any authority. Is that he creates an environment? They create an environment, I should say, where people can't do that, where they're not able to speak up and stand up for themselves. You know, I don't know how long Eugene has was it a month since he's passed? About it does feel soon, but when's it okay? Is 5 weeks okay? 6 weeks? They got to wait 3 months? Like, here are the facts. I know it's a tough time, and you know the wounds of his loss for people who cared about him are still fresh. But again, there's a lot of people that he hurt and made their lives difficult. And if, you know, maybe this goes a ways to helping them. It sounds like vendors are starting to get paid again.
Yeah.
Just healthy.
Yeah. Like,
you know,
that's got to be refreshing for people associated with the organization, that people provide a service and they actually get paid full value for it.
Can I just say that on a personal note, the thing that stood out to me is I hadn't heard, and usually you hear bits of behind the scenes, I hadn't heard anything about their Stanley Cup final Game 5 loss, that Melnick went in the room and gave a speech, possibly well inebriated, saying, you know, to the team, he's pretending to make stick saves and their goaltending's bad, and telling Anaheim to turn the music down. And, you know, like, I hadn't heard any of that. And that's tough, boy. That's a tough look. That story to me stood out as like, ugh, it made me wince a little bit.
The one thing I did hear through some sources is that the one thing that they're not happy with the Athletic was that Eugene was not given the opportunity at all during it to respond or defend any of this over what they think was 16 months.
So I did think initially when I read the homophobic comments, which to me changes legacy in a significant way. You know, I did look for them to say that, yeah, there was, you know, other people corroborated this and there was notes and whatever. But that was the one thing to me where, you know, you would have liked to give him the opportunity, and I understand that now they can't. But you would have liked to have heard him say, that didn't happen. You know, here's why these guys, you know, I don't know what their relationships were or why they want to take me down or whatever. You know, because that to me is, you know, someone says something on a phone call. How do you, and it's that damaging. You better be right.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they are. I'm not skeptical of that. I'm just saying it's a tough spot. That was the one thing that stood out to me, is like, ooh, better be right about that one.
And as we spoke earlier, it seems like his daughters, the estate, they want to keep it. I don't know for how long or forever. It remains to be seen. But, you know, whatever's gone on under that roof has not deteriorated the interest in possibly getting involved or potentially owning this team if it goes up for sale. I had heard as many as half a dozen tremendously interested in buying the team. The number I had heard from some, I think, pretty reputable people is, get ready for this one, $900 million.
Yeah. Here's
Wow.
here's my
Yowza.
thoughts on the girls wanting to keep it in the family. I think there is a chance to quickly juice the value of the franchise. Like quickly. Like if all of a sudden you have the Ottawa Senators and you get that deal with LeBreton Flats,
Yes.
the franchise is instantly worth far more money because you can say we have a place to go.
Like, you haven't even mentioned the gambling aspect
Right.
of owning a professional sports team. And if you are one of a handful of billionaires who want your crack into this great membership,
Mm-hmm.
like how often are teams for sale? NFL,
Right.
NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball. It's rare. And if you do now get in, you are going to probably overpay a little bit, but now you've got this gambling aspect and what naming rights could do or relationships. And we're under the building right now where Rogers has announced for the Blue Jays relationships that are going to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars. That is taking pro sports to another level. Where does that factor in the sale of the Ottawa Senators potentially?
If you turn around and sell the Senators today, it sounds like they have debt, to a variety of people.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. So there's debts out there that they owe. The team stinks and has stunk. They're in Canada there where it's not a desirable location. And I'm saying the value of the franchise today
Yes.
versus what it can be worth in 2 years. I find those girls, I'm like, I'm going to stick around for a couple years here.
They didn't become billionaires by giving it away here. So if someone's going to put a $900 million US tag on the Ottawa Senators, and you're going to get in there with forensic, and you're going to go through every last penny of where you come to the conclusion of $900 million.
I guess if you're them, you're saying that $900 million might be what it's going to be worth when you buy this team from me, here's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And I know what it's going to be worth. That to me is a more justifiable number than you say what it's worth today. Obviously it's not 900, but it's easy to see how it can be.
That the gambling part of it is an interesting point. That
Yeah.
just seems that there's just